Hello and welcome everyone to another video, and today we're going to take a look at the new season's update for the Go Battle League. And this season's theme is the Might and Mastery. It'll be focused a lot on fighting types such as Kubfu that will be newly released this season. I think some trainers already obtained theirs from a paid research task, which is good, while others will most probably get it later down the line in this season. So for this season, it starts on March 4th at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and will end on June 4th at the same time. However, for Malaysians, that would mean that it would start on March 5th at 5 a.m. and end at June 5th around the same time as well. So first we are going to start off with changes in the existing attacks that are available in the game. So first we are going to start with the fast moves, and we are going to start off with Hex. So before the Astonish buff, I think 2 seasons ago, this was the second best ghost fast move in the game after Shadow Claw. However, after the Astonish double buff, it sort of got relegated to the worst of the 3, even though all of the ghost fast moves right now can be considered as good. So what are the changes to the stats for Hex? As you can see here, there is a increase in damage as well as energy generation for the fast move, a one stat point increase in each, which means that now it has become the second best ghost fast move in my opinion. So what are the winners for this move update in particular? So the first one is Jellison. So as you can see here, Jellison having the fast move option of Bubble and Hex does have pretty good options. However, because of its charge move becoming more expensive, I think 2 seasons ago where Surf had a energy requirement increase from 40 to 45 damage, it does become a little bit more unobtainable or unplayable for Jellison. But because of the energy generation, even an increase of 1, it does make it a lot more playable. It brings it back into play as one of the top ghost types in the Great League meta. So, and the second one is Dusclops. So Dusclops, being a tanky ghost type, has access to Feint attack as well as Hex, if I recall correctly, and Fey tank being very bad and Hex being its only viable fast move, to play around with. And this does benefit its plethora of charge move options, with it having being able to now achieve the Shadow Punch, Ice Punch, and Fire Punch much faster, but also now having the energy generation required to maybe play the more expensive charge attacks in either Return or its ghost type charge move Poltergeist, which is an incredibly good and hard-hitting ghost move. However, it does require a lot of energy to play. And the third winner, in my view, for this update is Gorgeist. So in particular, I think it will be the supersized Gorgeist, but I feel like all of the Gorgeist does benefit from here, because Hex now does let it have some play to use its charge move Seed Bomb as well as Shadow Ball and Fire Blast. So it will have some play down the line, maybe in some specific team cups that we have for this season. So other losers for this move update, of course, is other psychic types and ghost types, because now, as I've told earlier, all of the ghost fast moves are going to be really good. That means ghost types will be right smack in the middle of how the meta revolves for this season. So more or less you can expect to have at least one ghost type in almost every other team that you meet, because it is just that good now. Ghost type fast moves have crazy energy generations, which gives a lot more flexibility for ghost types to play in the Great League as well as to a certain extent the Ultra League. So going on to the next update, which is the other fast move that has an update, which is rollout. So what happened to rollout was that 2 seasons ago, if I recall correctly, if not 3, it got a really massive buff to its damage and energy generation. But now what happened is Niantic saw that it was a little bit too busted, so it toned down the damage output by rollout just a bit, just by 1. However, you will see later that it does create a noticeable difference. So who are the winners for this update? As you can see here is Blastoise. Firstly, just as a disclosure, Blastoise is only in the list because later in this video we are going to take a look at new move additions to existing Pokemon's move pools, and for this season Blastoise did get access to rollout. And what rollout does is that it gives Blastoise another fast move option other than water gun to charge its charge moves a little bit faster than water gun, and does give it a little bit more play against flyers, such as maybe Bombardier or even Togekiss and things like that. So for that, Blastoise will have access to it, and it can just spam out hydro cannons like there is no tomorrow, and can also access its coverage moves like Skull Bash as well as Ice Beam even faster now than before. And the second winner of this is also another Pokemon that got access to rollout this season in the form of Glalie. Now Glalie is a pure ice type Pokemon with access to Ice Shard. Ice Shard being an above average fast move that it has access to, but rollout will give it just about more of what it really needed, which is energy generation, right? Because it does have 3 energy generation higher than Ice Shard, and it will let it access to its fast move even faster to spam the very, very powerful Avalanche and Shadow Ball. And the third winner for this is Weezing, another Pokemon that got access to rollout for this season, and it will give it a fast move that is actually beneficial for it and that can actually be impactful for its play other than it having to use something like an infestation. So are the losers for the fast move for the rollout debuff? Things such as Dunsparce, Licky, as well as Bibarel. So these things did lose that 1 damage from rollout, which means that it will not be able to tank as well against the neutral matchup, because now it won't be able to farm down their opponents as quickly as before. Although we do see Dunsparce and Licky still hovering around the edge of the meta, maybe even as a spice pick, Webarrel totally dropped off from the top meta because of this. Which is a shame, because Webarrel, as all of you might have known, is actually a fan favorite. So hopefully it will get some play down the line. Maybe somebody finds out a good team for it to be in, and people are able to take advantage of rollout on Webarrel. So that's all for the fast move updates, and going on to the first of the charge move updates, we will have Psyshock. So what happened to Psyshock this season is that it became 5 energy cheaper. So what does it mean that if it became cheaper? It means that Pokemon that have access to it will be able to spam a lot more of it. So who will be able to benefit most from this is Mew. So the Pokemon that knows all of the moveset does have access to Psyshock as one of its charge moves, although because of its 45 energy before this and because of the damage per energy ratio that wasn't really that good, Mew's recommended moveset are things other than that, such as Surf, Wild Charge, or even other movesets that you might want to use depending on the meta on that given day. But because now it is 40 energy, Mew is recommended to use a stab move for the first time in a while. And this could be really good, especially in the matchups against fighting types which you would normally win anyways, but it will become a little bit more dominant, as well as it having a better time against poison types. And the second winner would be Alolan Ninetales. If you look at the rankings online at PvPoke, what you will see is that Alolan Ninetales got a really big buff because of this, but Kanto Ninetales dropped off. But I feel that actually both will have some sort of benefit from this, because what Pokemon does not want a move that is a little bit more spammy, and that can dish out a lot more constant damage throughout the fight. So as in the Alolan Ninetales, it can take advantage of Powder Snow's energy generation to spam out more Psyshocks with a more desirable fast move count of 5-4-5-4 instead of a constant 5 fast move to every charge move. And the last one that will get some benefits from this is Togetic. So Togetic for this season will gain access to Psyshock, which means that now you'll be able to take advantage of Fairy Wind, which is one of the best fast move to generate energy, and it will be able to spam Psyshock against its one of its weaknesses of poison types, and at least it can put up a fight, even though it might still necessarily lose the battle in the end. And who are the losers for this? Are the fighting types and the poison types, because as you can see here from the 3 winners that we have chosen for Psyshock, we see that all 3 of them will have a dominant time against fighting types, with their psychic types and fairy types be able to do super effective against fighting types while taking resisted damage, and also poison types, because poison types do have a weakness to psychic type moves, and this gives them some sort of additional coverage or better coverage move to go against poison types. Next charge move is Dazzling Gleam. So Dazzling Gleam, in my opinion, has the biggest update for this season, where even though the damage was decreased by 20 points, the energy required was decreased by a massive 15, which means that overall its damage per energy did increase somewhat, which we'll see earlier how it will affect the winners and the losers for this charge move. So the winners of it, first of all, is Sableye, who has now access to Dazzling Gleam with Shadow Claw as its fast move of choice, and with Foul Play, Dazzling Gleam now, Shadow Sneak, as well as Return and Power Gem as its charge move options. Sableye will be a Swiss Army knife to be reckoned with in the Go Battle League, depending on the situation, depending on the team comp. The Sableye could be running all of these different charge move combinations, because all of them now are very viable for Sableye. And second one is again Alolan Ninetales. Alolan Ninetales with Psyshock buff as well as the Dazzling Gleam buff means that it now has an option to run, I would say, 3 different charge move combinations, right? Because you can opt for Powder Snow on top of Psyshock and or Dazzling Gleam, or you can run Psyshock and Dazzling Gleam as well for a better coverage against the general scheme of things, because a lot of Pokemons that are weak to ice are also weak to either fairy type or psychic type. Things like dragon types will also be weak against fairy types, and you also have grass poisons like Venusaur as well as Roserade that would all be running, that will have a part poison subtyping that will be weak against the psychic type Psyshock that can be coming from the Alolan Ninetales. So this one is also another Pokemon that you have to be aware of for this next season. And the last winner in my view for Dazzling Gleam would be Meloetta. So Meloetta also got a buff on Psyshock, but I believe Dazzling Gleam is the one that gives it the bigger buff here, because its main play is in the Dragon and Dark type heavy Master League. So with access to Quick Attack as a stab normal type move, and now Dazzling Gleam being a lot cheaper, it now has play against things that quick attack will not do that much damage against, such as Giratina or Dialga. So we have Dazzling Gleam now. They have been able to punish those Giratina and Dialga who think that they might be able to pull off a sneaky one and maybe resist the fast move. But here, Meloetta will be able to fight back with hard-hitting Dazzling Gleams and spam it in quite a reasonable amount of time as compared to before. The losers for the Dazzling Gleam updates is, of course, other Sableyes. Because as much as Sableye has access now to Dazzling Gleam to threaten fighting types and dark type, Sableye is also a dark type in its own right. So which means that Sableye will also be affected by the damage and by the cheap nature of Dazzling Gleam now, cheaper nature of Dazzling Gleam now for this season. Which means that if your team has a Sableye in the bag and your opponent's safe swaps into a Sableye of their own, you might want to think twice before swapping into your own Sableye because you will be in an energy disadvantage and they would be able to get to those Dazzling Gleams before you do. So just be beware of the situation at hand before you go into a Sableye matchup from now on. So the next one would be fighting types, because fighting types are now going to be hit harder by all of these Pokemons. Dazzling Gleam is a move that is very widespread in terms of its accessibility, which means that fighting types will have to be more wary of the damage that they will have to take if they were to get trapped into this type of situations, and other ghost types as well. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, ghost types are not weak to fairy type moves, but hear me out, right? Because ghost types in this instance, what I'm talking about are ghost types which have other subtypings that might also be weak to these Pokemons that are considered as winners in my book for Dazzling Gleam. So when you look at ghost types, you have ghost types like pure ghost types like Dusclops, Dusknoir, or even ghost flying like Driftblim, or even ghost dragon like Giratina, or ghost ground like what is that? Oh yeah, like Golurk. Those things will have one thing in common in that they will have weaknesses that can be countered easily by things like such as Sableye, or even Alolan Ninetales, or even Gengar for that matter, because Gengar is also a part ghost type, but crucially is part poison type, which means that Psyshock earlier that can be run by Alolan Ninetales and Meloetta can also hurt it as well. And the next one would be Aqua Jet. This one is a bit tricky to state because, as you can see here, even though it got an incredibly big buff in terms of damage with a 25 damage buff and it became cheaper by 5 energy, there's not that many Pokemon that have access to it actually, or not that many Pokemon that have access to it that are actually really good. So in my view, I would say there might be potentially only one winner in this, in the form of Golisopod. Golisopod before this runs a combination of X-Scissor, Aerial Ace, or Liquidation. However, now with Aqua Jet, it can run a better or a harder hitting, cheaper water type move, but at the expense of the potential defense debuff by Liquidation. And in terms of the losers for this, it's quite hard to say as of now because Aqua Jet as it is very bad, and Golisopod is not really at that meta before this, so we would have to see how the performance goes. I might try it out in a team cup just to see how it works, because it has potential, but as of now it's just potential and nothing more. The next charge move that got updated was Dynamic Punch, and what happened to Dynamic Punch is that became 5 energy cheaper now, which means that it has a damage to energy ratio of 2.0, which is one of the best DPEs in the game currently. And who wins this move update? Things such as Golurk. Now Golurk, with the Mud Slap buff that it got a few seasons ago, will be able to spam the Shadow Punches and Dynamic Punches more easily, which means that it has an almost perfect coverage in those two charge moves, where the Pokemon that will be able to resist its Shadow Punches in the form of Dark type as well as normal type will be able to get hit by the super effective Dynamic Punch. And the next one that will win with this Dynamic Punch move update will be Grumpig. Grumpig is a Pokemon that got access to Dynamic Punch for this season, as well as a very good Psychic fast move in the form of Psywave, which I would say is quite busted compared to Psycho Cut because it also has the damage to go with it. And Grumpig having access to Shadow Ball as well as Dynamic Punch now would be in the same situation as Golurk, but is just be able to spam a lot more of the Shadow Balls and Dynamic Punch against its counters, which means that it will be able to easily overwhelm its opponents, especially if the opponents are lacking in terms of shields that they're able to use. And thirdly is Dusknoir, and also in somewhat Medicham as well. But I'm going to start with how it affects Dusknoir. Dusknoir has access to Astonish as well as Hex, so it will be able to choose between a higher energy generation in Hex, or it wants to have a above average energy generation but a high damage output in Astonish to go with. And it will also be in the same reasoning as well as Golurk, where it will have Shadow Punch as well as Dynamic Punch now to hit Pokemon that would otherwise hard counter it in normal situations. And why Medicham? Why is Medicham sneaking into the picture there? Well, I feel like Medicham, after the counter nerf, it got hit really hard and it dropped off from like the top 10 of the meta to like outside the top 100 basically. And Dynamic Punch becoming cheaper means that it can still access Dynamic Punch now with one less counter. Yeah, I mean, one less counter, believe it or not, does make a lot of difference, because when you want to hit something like a Registeel or a Bastiodon, one counter could mean a lot of difference, because you want to hit those charge moves to get their shields, especially if the Pokemon on the other side is shields down. And this is one of the ways for it to do. You can either go for counter to spam it every like 7 count, or you can go for Psycho Cut. For every 5 Psycho Cuts, it will be able to hit a Dynamic Punch against the opponent. And who are the losers for this Dynamic Punch update? You have Lapras. So so we're going to go for Lapras, because Lapras now, with its move updates, with having access to Psywave and Sparkling Aria, would be one of the meta picks for the season, especially since it is one of the fan favorites of all time. And Lapras, even though it is going to get a moment in the limelight, I feel like the limelight would also be on its counters, whether it is Grumpig or whether it is Dusknoir or Medicham for that matter. And secondly, it will be the normal types, like how I explained earlier. Normal types will be cautious when they safe swap into a Dusknoir or a Golurk, because now they have access to Dynamic Punch to counter it. So things such as the Dunsparce would have to make sure that they have the energy generation lead as well as shields to play around, so that they're able to outspam their opponents. And secondly would be steel type. So like I said earlier, Registeel and Bastiodon won't feel really good about it, especially if they get hit by a dynamic punch from something like a ground pick, which in theory they should be able to beat quite convincingly with their tankiness and their hard hitting moves. But unfortunately, dynamic punch will turn the tides against them. Next one on the list, we have Sludge. So Sludge was an overall bad move with 50 damage for 40 energy required. Now it got a 20 damage buff in its stats, which is really good, which is really beneficial because Sludge now is, I think, the second cheapest poison type move in the game after Poison Fang. However, it does deal a lot more damage for 5 extra energy compared to Poison Fang. Or is it the same energy? I forgot, but I think it's somewhere around there. So the biggest winners for Sludge would be Swampert. So Swampert does get access to Sludge for this season, and what it means is that even though Mud Shot does get debuffed, did get debuffed, I think around the same season as when Counter got debuffed, it will be able to still access Sludge in 5 fast moves, right? You just need 5 Mud Shots to get to Sludge. And that in combination to Hydro Cannon also being 40 energy, and on top of it having a quite above average attack stat comparatively to other picks in the meta, it means that grass type Pokemon will not have an easy time in switching into a counter swapping into a Swampert, because now Swampert will be able to outspam them to deal super effective or even neutral damage in the case of Venusaur. But now Venusaur with its cheaper poison type move would not have to run something like a Sludge Wave for a grass counter, yeah. And the next winner would be Galarian Weezing. Galarian Weezing currently runs Fairy Wind, Brutal Swing, as well as Overheat of Play Rough, for the simple reason being that those are better coverage options for it. However, because it is a Fairy and Poison type, unfortunately because of that, it will not have a Fairy chart, or will not have a stab charge move that it will be able to use most of the time. But because of the Sludge buff, Galarian Weezing will now be able to spam its charge move even more now, because it is recommended to run Brutal Swing and Sludge. Or now you have the option to drop Brutal Swing and maybe try to go for a Sludge Play Rough, maybe, for all step charge move combination on Weezing, which could work in certain team compositions. And then you have Swalot, this gummy bear with a mustache, I guess. Yeah, tell me what you think about this Swalot. Also has access to Sludge for this season. It was given access to Mud Shot a few seasons back, and unfortunately the charge move that it had access to were quite expensive. Ice Beam required 55 energy, and then Sludge 1 required 50 energy. So it was not really that feasible for it to play around with the big boys of the Great League, so to speak. But now with Sludge, this will be the bait move of choice, and you are able to run it with an Ice Beam and have some play maybe against a Azumarill Dragonite Core and things like that, and it will be very beneficial, especially in those very heavy metas. And who are the losers for this? You have the grass and the fairy types. So same logic as what Swampert had. It's a great coverage move against grass and fairy types. Now Swampert will be able to get to at least one poison type moves to hit things that usually would not have any problem against it, like for example Azumarill or a Superior in the Great League, or even a Clefable in the Ultra League. Now would have to deal with the damage that it can throw with Sludge. And because of its spamminess and because of the relative accessibility of Swampert and Galarian Weezing, I feel like this would make those two quite ever present in the Great League and Ultra League. And the next one that we have is Acrobatics. Acrobatics will be 5 energy cheaper, and who are the winners for it? It will be Emolga and Jumpluff. Acrobatics is a flying type move that does not have that wide of a use pool, I would say. Not that many Pokemon have access to it. These are the two that have access to it. I think the only other Pokemon that has access to it is Naganadel, but that Pokemon has no usage in any league because its stat distribution and typing is actually quite bad. And who are the losers for this Acrobatics update? It will be other Jumpluffs now. Same reason as Sableye with Dazzling Gleam. Jumpluff, if it comes into a mirror fight, just even for a turn late, will get punished heavily because now Acrobatics will require 7 Fairy Winds for the first one, and subsequent ones will only require 6 Fairy Winds to deal substantial damage against it. And the other losers will be the 2 types that would get hurt the most by a flying type move update, which is fighting type as well as grass types. And the next charge move update, which is for me the most questionable update, because it's Air Cutter. Because why do I say it's the most questionable? Air Cutter is a moveset that is usually given to like base Pokemon or first stage Pokemon. It's not really that used by fully evolved Pokemon. The Pokemon that are able to access it are very limited. But let's just see what they made it to become. So the damage was decreased by 15, however the energy required was decreased by 20, and it does have a 30% chance for an attack buff by 1 stage. When you look at it, first glance, energy becomes 35, 30% chance for a attack increase. It's quite good. But the damage of 45 doesn't really shout out that much because it's just really mediocre in my view. And who are the winners for this? It's quite hard to say. Maybe Oricorio, simply because it has an all flying type moveset, and this would be the cheapest flying type move it has. Before this it was Aerial Ace, but now I guess it's Air Cutter. But I would say that there are no losers in here because Air Cutter is just a move that is not used and will most probably not be used ever. Like, not unless if they provide it to a lot more Pokemons. So the next charge move that will be updated, that got updated, was Rock Tomb. So I think this is also one of the best that got updated because it increased the damage of Rock Tomb by 10, but also decreasing the energy required by 10. So when you look at Rock Tomb, who do you think is the biggest winner of all? It has to, of course, be Claydol. So Niantic, it has been a running joke in my community at least that Niantic has been trying so hard to update Claydol. It's like almost every other season they have tried to give Claydol either a new move or an update to an existing move by Claydol, and somehow or another Claydol was just never part of the meta discussion. However, with this double buff to Rock Tomb with its guaranteed attack drop on the opponent, Claydol is finally in the top ranks of Great League, and with XL Candies it might also have some very good play in the Ultra League, especially against things such as Cobalion. And you also have Fortress. Now Fortress is a steel and bug type Pokemon with a quadruple weakness to fire type, which means that now it has a very good option to deal with those fire types that counter swap into Fortress for a supposed easy KO. Now they will have to at least shield once against Fortress, especially if the Fortress is still healthy, because with Volt Switch we'll be able to spam the Rock Tomb relatively fast. And last but not least, we have Credilli, which also has access to Rock Tomb this season. Before this, you either have to pick between Rock Slide and Stone Edge as a coverage move on Credilli. However, now with the introduction of Rock Tomb as part of Credilli's charge move arsenal, you have a charge move that deals more damage than Rock Slide, but is also quite cheap compared to Stone Edge. And who are the losers for this move update will be the fire types and the flying types. Those poor typings, like fire type as it is, Claydol now is a ground type that will hit very hard against fire types. Mud slaps will chunk them, especially those grounded fire types such as the Typhlosion. And you have things such as Credilli and the Fortress that will be able to snipe all those flyers with ease, or at least give them a hard time. So things such as a Pidgeot or even a Talonflame for that matter would not be appreciating those Rock Tombs any more than any other flying types that are currently available. And next we have Nightshade. Nightshade got a debuff. One of the, I think the only move that got a debuff for this season besides Rollout. The damage that got decreased from Nightshade is by a value of 10. So now it just becomes a 70 damage for 45 energy. And who are the winners for this Nightshade update is Psychic and Ghost types, because now they will not be able to get chunked by those Nightshades as fast as they would have before this season. And the losers for this is the Galarian Corsola, which I think was introduced last season, or was it the season before? I think it was last season. And as well as Noctowl, the two Pokemon that mainly uses Nightshade for its coverage move, or in the case of Galarian Corsola would be its only viable stab move, a stab ghost charge move, sorry. And the next one will be Foul Play. Foul Play also got reworked somewhat with 10 less damage and but requiring 5 less energy. The winners for this would be Sableye, Malamar, and Amoonguss. Sableye now having Dazzling Gleam and a faster charging Foul Play means that it can run any of its moveset that it has. Shadow Claw will be able to enable it to charge up to all of its moveset with relative ease, and it will be very, very tough on the opponents to judge what is it running right now. For Malamar now it is the same thing, because Malamar being part psychic means it will take neutral damage from ghost type moves, and with Foul Play now being cheaper, it will be able to outspam other ghost types, which it might not be able to have done before this. And Amoonguss, being Amoonguss now, this is the cheapest charge move that it has, so it will have maybe some play in the Ultra League, I would say, because it has access to Astonish and now Foul Play. So I would guess that it will have a lot of play against things such as Crocelias or Giratinas. So the losers of it, besides the Psychic and Ghost type, which I've talked about numerous times already in this video, will be Berserker. So Berserker being a steel type Pokemon with access to close combat, it used to run Foul Play on top of close combat, for the simple reason being both of those do require the same amount of energy to charge, which is 45 before this. But now, because of Foul Play being 40 energy, it does become a little bit more awkward for its timing, considering it has Shadow Claw as its fast move, which produces 8 energy, which means that now it requires 5 Shadow Claws for foul play, but requires 6 for close combat, which makes it a little bit more imbalanced in its practicality of using both those moves, and will most probably want to use Trailblaze, I think, instead. And last but not least is Discharge. Discharge has a decrease of damage by 10, but also a decrease in energy by 5. And the biggest winner for this discharge update would be the Unova Stunfisk. Unova Stunfisk having Mud Bomb as its other, or the only other viable charge move, now has 2 fast moves that require 40 energy, which means that it can somewhat be a guessing game for the mons that will come in against it, because now you have 2 moves with different coverages that cost the same moves, and therefore will be able to be utilized differently. And with it having access to Thundershock as well as Mudshot, it can be run as its normal electric type archetype, or it can go for a more of a ground attacker with Mudshot and only requiring 5 Mudshots to get to Mud Bombs, as well as Discharge. And water types will also be winners in this instance, because water types will not be able to get hit as hard by Discharge as before, even though it will become cheaper. And we will see why by looking at the losers for this charge move in the form of Galvantula and Magneton. These two, if I recall correctly, has access to Volt Switch, and because of that, it is now much it's much harder for them to consistently deal damage from Discharge. Why do I say that? Because before this, Galvantula and Magneton do not stay in the matches very long, right? Because they are very frail Pokemon. They don't have the highest of defenses. Their HP is also not that high, and they also have a lot of weaknesses. So when you have a Pokemon like a frail Pokemon like Galvantula having its biggest damage output charge move being decreased in damage, that just means that now you won't be able to do that much damage on its 1 or 2 charge moves that it is able to get. And this would mean that it might not be as viable in matchups that it would necessarily dominate before. And that's the end of the updates from existing attacks. And now we are going to look at the attacks that got added to existing Pokemons currently. And first, we are going to take a look at Blastoise. So Blastoise, what happened to it this season? It got access to Rollout. Rollout has a higher energy generation than Water Gun, but at the same time, from some battles that I've tried using Blastoise, it is very clunky. It's quite hard to use it in my view, because Water Gun was just simply amazing for it as a water type stab fast move that is able to hit rock types as well as ground types for super effective damage. But because of Rollout being a rock type move, it does not provide as much of a fast move pressure compared to Water Gun. And for that, I would sort of have to put it in the B tier, for the simple reason you have to make a trade-off of the stab fast move for higher energy generation. So it wasn't totally good news for Blastoise getting Rollout. So the next one that we have on the list would be Credilli. Credilli having access now to Rock Tomb with its good typing of grass and rock, it will be able to stay in the fight against fire types longer, and will be able to hit them much harder now. In my view, this would be I would say a B, but higher than Blastoise simply because it does have better coverages, better utility with Rock Tomb as compared to Blastoise with Rollout. And the next one is Dusknoir. Dusknoir, being a pure Ghost type, will have a hard time against Dark type Pokemon because its moveset before this season does not have any other moveset that can hit Dark type even for neutral damage. But here it does have access to Dynamic Punch, which means that it would have a lot of fun dealing back tons of damage against the dark types and the normal types, which means that it will go into the A tier in my view because it's just that good. Florges is the next one on the list. Florges has access to Trailblaze. Trailblaze being a grass type move would be able to give it an additional coverage move that is not named Petal Blizzard. It's a cheaper grass type move. Now it will be able to at least deal some sort of damage in the Master League against things such as Groudon and Kyogre. And it can also raise that attack to dish out higher Fairy Wind damage and maybe get to those Moon Blasts or Draining Kiss much easier and hit harder. And therefore, I will also put this in A tier. Although there might be some question asked because we still haven't gotten a Master League rotation yet for this season, but I feel like it's worthy of an A tier. Next one would be Glalie. Glalie also being Glalie is a pure ice type Pokemon. Having access to rollout means that it will be able to win certain matchups that it would not normally be able to win. So things such as Talonflame now will be moving into its win column because rollout now would make Talonflame come into range of Avalanche even faster, and even if the Talonflame does shield, the rollout damage would just be too oppressive for it, and therefore it will be able to beat Talonflame. However, there will still be questions asked of Glalie because of its poor typing of a pure ice type Pokemon. It might not be able to deal with the other parts of the meta as well as before because of the other updates that we'll be seeing later on in this video with other Pokemon. So I feel like it is somewhere around the C, I would say, yeah, because even with the rollout, I feel like it's still a very, very left field pick if somebody were to use it. Next is Grumpig. It's easy just to tell you what happens to its rank in the Great League and Ultra League after it got access to the double buff of Psywave and Dynamic Punch. So what happened to Grumpig was that it was a sub 600 to 700 rank Pokemon in the Great League and Ultra League, but because of those two additions, it instantly became top 5 picks in both leagues, and clearly because of that it will go into the S tier, one of the best additions for this season. And next we have Lapras. Lapras also getting a double buff in the form of Psywave and Sparkling Aria. Sparkling Aria being a 45 energy charge move just like Surf, which it already has, but it does deal a little bit more damage than Surf. But it's the same result from Blastoise. Is a bit clunky. I don't see a lot of people using it down the line as the season progresses, as the hype dies down, so to speak. Even though it does have coverage against fighting type moves, its charge moves that it's able to use is not really that impressive on Lapras especially. So because of that, I would say that it will also be somewhere in the B tier for this season. The next Pokemon that we have on the list is Sableye. So Sableye got access to Dazzling Gleam, making it almost how do you say it? It's almost like a Swiss Army knife of a Pokemon, right? Because it has now a move which is a Dark type, a Ghost type, a Rock type, a Fairy type, as well as a Normal type. So which means that it has almost a complete coverage against every single type there is in the game. So because of that, I feel that Sableye deserves to go into the S tier, but right after Grumpig, it is going to be a menace to play against it in the Great League after this, and hopefully it doesn't get doesn't get buffed anymore after this, because it just became incredibly good. So we have Swalot here. Swalot has access now to Sludge, but unfortunately because of its pure poison type and it's accessed only to Mud Shot as well as Ice Beam, then I feel like it's not really that good, but it will have its moments, I feel. But unfortunately we have to go into the D tier. It did get better though, don't get me wrong. However, there are a lot more Pokemon that are better than it. Pure poison type is one of the worst types in the game, and it loses to other poison types as well in the form of Clodsire. And yeah, and next we have Swampert. Swampert with Sludge now has a very cheap and very potent poison type move as a coverage against the fairy types, and more importantly the quadruple weakness to grass. And now you can now there is a bit of a guessing game. You are able to still run Hydro Cannon with Earthquake. However, with Sludge it does give a much cheaper, much spammy option in the pipeline, and I feel that that will give it also around a B tier. For that, I think it does improve it a lot, but it will still be around the periphery of the meta. It won't necessarily be right smack in the middle of the meta. Togetic with Psyshock, it has now a coverage move against poison types. It also has access to Fairy Wind. Dazzling Gleam also got buffed, and it also has access to Ancient Power and Aerial Ace. Unfortunately, its moveset, even though it's good, its stats are not really that good. It might also be, it might benefit in the moveset might benefit it in restricted meta. However, for now, it's safe to say that it will still be kept in people's storage and will not be used as much, and therefore it would be, I would say, in the C tier. Next, we are going to Weezing. Weezing being also another pure poison type with access to Rollout. I don't think it will benefit it that much against the meta, especially because yes, its charge move options does have a lot of coverage in the form of Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, and Thunderbolt, but its typing is just really bad. It couldn't be saved unless it is an incredibly good update, right? Like for example, if it got a really good coverage against ground type, would have been really epic. Unfortunately, it doesn't get that, so I feel like it's also a D tier Pokemon with that. Next one would be Bellybolt. Bellybolt is a pure electric type move, having access to Sucker Punch for this season. Sucker Punch is overall, I would say, top 2, if not the best fast move in the game currently. However, Bellybolt only has access to electric type charge move, which means that it's a very predictable mon and is very easily hard counted by something like a Clodsire or even other grass types for that matter, because it won't have any coverage moves that it is able to dish out. And even with the introduction of Sucker Punch, it already has a good fast move in the form of Thunder Shock. But the main issue with Belly Bolt is its charge move options, which it is lacking. Therefore, the addition of Sucker Punch is meaningless, which puts it in the F tier. Unfortunately, it's just really bad for it. It won't make any difference. And next we have Maiena with the addition of Sucker Punch as well. Maiena being a dark type means Sucker Punch will be a step fast move. It will be able to take advantage of Poison Fang, making the opponent's defense weaker, and it also has access to Crunch as well as Play Rough, if I recall correctly. However, its stats are really horrendous. Its stats are very subpar and is very imbalanced. I know its attack is quite high, however, its bulk is really not there. It's still, I think, around. It's still really not that good. It's still. I'm being very generous if I think that it's top 300 right now in terms of the Pokemons in Great League, and it's definitely not usable in the Ultra League, much less the Master League. Therefore, my Iena would be a D, but a high D, simply because it does get a lot more utility from Sucker Punch being a step fast move compared to Rollout for Weezing as well as Sludge for Swalot. And the next one is Roserade, with it having access now to Poison Sting. Roserade with this additional fast move means now it has four, I would say four really good fast moves, right? You have two Poison type fast move as well as two Grass type fast move in the form of Poison Jab, Poison Sting, Magical Leaf as well as Bullet Seed. You can somewhat pick your poison in this instance because depending on what you want it to do, you will be able to now do it better, especially with Poison Sting being able to generate 9 energy for every Poison Sting. And it also has access to a very diverse moveset in the form of Fire Weather Ball, Leaf Storm, Grass Knot, as well as the recently buffed Dazzling Gleam, which means that in Grass League you can opt to maybe run a Fire Weather Ball as well as Leaf Storm, but maybe if you want to use it in the Master League, you can, or Ultra League, you can opt for Dazzling Gleam for those more present Dragon types. And for that, I feel like for this Roserade, it will be in the B tier. I feel like that's appropriate positioning for it. I will have to test out the theory on how good it is. It might also be a high C for some people, or maybe a D. But for me, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it is a B tier Pokemon. Next one on the list is Dragalge, a Poison Dragon type Pokemon with access now to Sludge Bomb, which means it has a cheaper coverage move, or even a stab move for that matter. Because before this, it will have to either use Outreach or Sludge Wave as the second charge move alongside Aqua Tail. And at least with the addition of Sludge Bomb, it will be able to hit its counters in the form of fairy types more constantly, such as things such as Azumarill or Clefable, which will hit it like a truck with its fairy charge moves, would have to most probably be more wary, right, of Dragalge spamming the poison type charge moves with Dragon Tail's quite decent energy generation. However, do I think that it can be higher than Roserade at this moment? Maybe not. Dragon Tail is quite clunky, where it is a 3-turn fast move, and energy generation is just a bit above average, but I feel like it is better than Glalie, therefore it will go into the C tier. And the next one is I think the second last one to get or third last, which gets a double buff, and Bombardier for this season has a double buff of Sucker Punch as well as Rock Tomb. Sucker Punch again being a stab fast move because it is a dark flying type, and Rock Tomb being a coverage move that it can use against other flying types as well as other fire types. Bombardier with those two now becomes a lot like a budget Galarian Moltres for the Great League, because let's face it, Galarian Moltres is very hard to get, and Bombardier with the double buff at least gives you an option to run a pseudo Galarian Moltres in the Great League, because it already has access to, I think, Fly or Brave Bird or something like that, and I think it also has access to Ancient Power, so it can function somewhat similarly to Galarian Moltres, and for that I think it would be somewhere in the A tier in my view, because it would be a very good addition to the Great League and Ultra League metas, and it will be able to change some matchups, especially with the Sucker Punch edition. Next is Wilmer and Wailord. Both of them do have rollout as a fast move addition for this season. However, I just don't see it being good for anything, right? Like, because yes, it's a water type. Yes, it has very high bulk with its insanely high HP. However, its defense stats are quite miserable and its attack stats are below average. And for that, I feel like it is those two are going to be D tier additions. Both have access to Surf. However, Wilmer does have access. Wilmer has access to Water Pulse, while Wailord has access to Surf. But Wilmer has the added benefit of having a cheap coverage move in the form of Body Slam. And next one is Ribombee. Ribombee, the tiny fly Pokemon, somehow has access to Charm. If you have never used Ribombee or never knew of its existence, it's okay. Not that many people actually use it because it doesn't really have huge impact. Before this, it only has a fast move of Fairy Wind, which in itself is quite good for not for the fact that its charge moves are actually quite expensive in the form of Bug Buzz, I think, as well as Dazzling Gleam. And with Charm doesn't do much for it because its charge moves are just horrendously expensive, and you need Excels to play Ribombee, and Ribombee is not really that good in terms of its stats anyways, so therefore it will go into F, but it's definitely higher than Bellibolt for sure. Next one will be Drampa. Drampa is a normal dragon type, and if I recall correctly, it has access to Swift. So Swift being a normal type move means that it will have a very good step addition to its move pool. Before this, you would run Dragon Breath, Fly, as well as Outreach, if I recall correctly, or Dragon Pulse. But now with Swift, you're able to use a very cheap stab moveset which deals neutral to all but 3 typings in the game. However, its awkward typing of normal and dragon does leave it exposed against a lot more weaknesses as compared to other dragons. So for that, I feel like it is a C tier Pokemon. Next one, we have Linoon with access to Swift. Linoon, being a pure normal type, will greatly benefit from the Swift addition, just like how Wigglytuff benefited from it when it got Swift to its move pool. Linoon before this only has non-stab charge move in the form of like Grass Knot, Thunder, and Dig, if I recall correctly, which means that it was not able to dish out stab, charge move damage, or even any stab damage for that matter, because its fast move of choice is Shadow Claw. So at least now with Swift, it would be able to deal some sort of stab damage to take some benefit from its normal typing. But is it really good though? normal typing will have its moments, I feel, but with the addition of dynamic punch, two things which Lee Noon is supposed to do great against, such as Grumpig or Dusknoir, it would be I would say a high C tier, somewhere around this area with Dragalge, I would say. Some people might be able to make it work, but I don't think it will have that much of a difference. And the next one is Furret. Furret, also a pure normal type Pokemon, will have access now to Trailblaze as well as Swift. Furret was cursed from the beginning with having a horrible charge move pool in the form of Hyper Beam, Brick Break, and Dig. However, with these two additions, it can somehow now have some play with its fast move of Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch can charge to those Trailblaze and get those attack buffs quite quickly, and with Swift as its other charge move, it can run rampant, especially if it is against something that does not do a lot of fast move damage against it. Unfortunately, normal type and its bulk is not really that good, so I would say that it's somewhere around the Linoon area of the C tier. And next we have Venomoth having access to Psywave. Venomoth previously runs Confusion as its fast move. I don't think anybody runs Infestation as its fast move of choice. And Psywave gives it a higher energy generation compared to Confusion. However, it doesn't really mitigate that much of Venomoth's current issues that it has in being relevant in Great League, because Venomoth is a bug and poison typing, again one of the worst typings in the game. Bug as it is already has a lot of weaknesses and is very bad defensively. With its poison typing, it just makes it super horrible, right? Like, I feel like it doesn't give justice to it, and giving Psywave might increase its viability by a bit, but I don't see it affecting Venomoth that much. So that being said, I feel like it is also in the C tier. Next on the list is Bruxish. Bruxish is a water psychic type Pokemon, and it will have access to a new psychic type charge move in the form of Psyshock. So Psyshock, as you guys already saw earlier, it got a buff, a very good buff, and unfortunately it will not make that much difference for Bruxish, right? Because Bruxish already has access to the best psychic type move in the form of Psychic Fangs. It is able to already debuff opponents' defenses and take advantage of its high attack, as well as Aqua Tail being its other charge move that it can spam. So because of that, solely for the purpose of this video and its addition of Psyshock, I feel like it's an F tier. It does not move the needle as much for Bruxish. Reuniclus, hidden power. I mean, what else? That's the only problem it has, hidden power, and yet they decided to not give it a fast move, but rather another charge move that it will not be able to use. So it's straight to the bin, F tier, worst of the worst in this list. Third from last will be Togekiss. Togekiss has access now to Psyshock. Togekiss running Charm would need charge moves that are quite cheap, and Psyshock is one of them. Now it has access to Dazzling Gleam, Ancient Power, as well as Aerial Ace and Aura Sphere. It will have an option of what to use, especially in the Master League, where you will need different coverages, especially for the ever-changing meta, which changes with most probably every update or every new edition of a legendary Pokemon, right? So in that instance, I feel like Togekiss would be somewhere in the A tier. I feel like because Psyshock would just be a great addition for it. It is a cheap charge move for it to use, and Togekiss just needs good cheap charge moves at this point in time. And now we have this mammoth Pokemons in the form of Mamoswine and Piloswine. So both of them will have access to Icicle Spear. It's a very cheap, I believe it's a 35 energy ice type charge move. Mamoswine, or both of these actually already have access to Avalanche. However, with Mamoswine being a lot more prevalent in Master League, you would want charge moves that can deal a lot more damage because of the superior bulk that is present in Master League, and I feel that Icicle Spear does not change direction of the needle in terms of Mamoswine's utility in the Master League. Therefore, I would say that it will be in the D tier. Maybe if you want to be cheeky and just want to spam Icicle Spear, maybe you can do that, but I don't think it would deal that much of a difference. However, for Piloswine, it does it could be a little bit more beneficial because in the Great League and to an extent Ultra League, you do want to spam a lot more charge moves because the Pokemons are a little bit more frail, and you would want to have you want to dispose of the opponent's shield as fast as possible. So Piloswine, but because Piloswine's typing of ground and ice, it does have weaknesses against a lot of the common types in the meta currently, such as the water types or even the fire types or fighting types. So I feel like in this instance, the drawback is more of its typing, but the Icicle Sphere edition is very much needed. However, I feel like it's also somewhere in the C tier for this season. And with the conclusion of Piloswine, that is the end of this video. Let me know what you think of the additions of this season, which one you think is the best Pokemon, and which one you feel that is going to go under the radar a bit and cause mayhem against other trainers. So with that, do drop a like and subscribe. It will help a lot with the algorithm and such in getting this video out to a lot more people. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.